Today's daf we're going to be learning is Chullin daf kaf bet. This is the daf for Chag Shavuot. We're going to start our daf today with a review of yesterday's daf, and we're going to use the study guide. Just a quick review. We saw there were two sections which talked about the bird offerings that you're going to bring, that we've been discussing. The first is in the beginning of Vayikra, where it talks about the korban olah, and it says you're supposed to do malika and burn it on the altar, but it doesn't say anything about separating the head from the body. Specifically in chapter 5 in Vayikra, when it talks about the bird sin offering, you're actually supposed to bring, if you don't bring an animal, if you can't afford it, you bring two birds, one for a sin offering and one for a burnt offering. And there, first of all, when it talks about the sin offering, it says you do malika on the head from the back of the neck, but you don't sever the head from the body. And then it said in Pasuk Yud, Ve'et hasheni yaseh olah kamishpat. The second one you do is a korban olah, like the rule of what? And that was what we had a big debate. The rabbi said like the rule of, and it has the criteria of the chatat behema, the sin offering of an animal, in three ways. That it doesn't come from, it has to come from Chullin. It can't come from Maser Sheni, for example. Has to be done during the day, and it has to be done with the right hand. And then we had Rabbi Ishmael, who said, no, it's like the hatzahov. It's like the bird sin offering, that you do it from the back of the neck. Now, both of those interpretations believed that since it's not compared to the sin offering of the bird in the sense of that you don't sever the neck, they assumed that you actually do have to sever the neck. Because again, it's not similar to the hatzahov, either because it's similar to the chatat behema, to the animal one, or it's similar to the sin offering of the bird, but only in the sense that you do it in the back of the head, the malika, but not that you sever the head completely. Okay, right. It's not similar in the way that in the sin offering you don't sever the head completely, and here you would have to sever it completely. And then each of them had a pasuk from which they derived, how do we know that it's not rov shnayim, right? That you would do most of the simanim, and that's because either, according to Tanakama, umalak v'ktir, just like when you burn it, the head and the body are separate. Also, when you do malika, right? We do this comparison of malika and burning. Has to be separate, or v'hikrivo, right, which was in Pasuk Tevav in chapter 1, v'hikrivo kohen al mizbech. Hikrivo is, instead of just v'hikriv, he brings it to the altar, he says, no, v'hikrivo. Specifically, this is done differently. So how differently? We assume the issue of separating the head from the body. Okay, whereas the hatzahov is not, and the olah is. Okay, that's what we had so far. Now we're going to start with Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon at the bottom of Kaf Aleph Amud Bet. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Omer Kamishpat Kimishpat Hatzahov. So he agrees with Rabbi Ishmael that we are comparing it to the previous one, right? The sin offering of the bird, but in a different way. And this is where we get to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, who has a different approach to the severing of the head. He says specifically on that issue, Malahalan, although we're going to have to understand it in a minute. It sounds like it's talking about something different. That you hold the head and the body while you do the sprinkling of the blood. So we do the same thing also for the burnt offering. To which the Gemara says, "My kamar." Well, what do you mean? We don't do that. So they say, "Hachi kamar." This is what it means. Not the person is holding it, but the head is held by the body. Meaning it's not completely severed when you do the sprinkling of the blood. So just like by the sin offering, it's not completely severed, also here it's not completely severed, which is going to mean we're going to cut the majority of two simanim, but only the majority, not cut it off completely. Well, if that's the case, and we're really learning it from the sin offering, here comes the question of Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, right? Each one had a question here. So now we're going to raise this difficulty. But wait, the hatzahov is like a regular bird. All you have to do is cut one siman. You don't have to cut both the trachea and the esophagus. One is sufficient. So maybe one is sufficient. Where we get rov shnayim. Maybe it's not the majority of two. Talmud lomar v'hikrivo. So now he understands hikrivo. There's a difference between olah and hatzahov. What is it? It's not separate the head completely or sever the head completely. Don't sever it. It's cut one siman in the chatat ha'of, and in the olat ha'of you have to cut two. But again, only the majority of 2, not completely 2. Okay. Now we have all 3 opinions and the questions and the answers we asked, right, and resolved about all of them. But now we're going to go back and raise some other issues. Now, if you have umalak viktir, what do we see? Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon try to say it's obvious the olat ha'of and the hatzahov are distinguishable because of the word hikrivo, that they have to be different in some way, and each one had a different way. But the rabbis learned that from umalak viktir, that it's different because the head is completely severed, because just like you burn it separate, you also have to do malika and separate it. So what do you need hikrivo for? What is hikrivo coming for according to the rabbi's position? Because without the word hikrivo, we might have thought that really the comparison kam mishpat, do it like that, is the simple reading of it. This is done like the previous one, which is the bird. V'imishum umalak viktir, and now if you say, oh, you wouldn't think that because malak viktir shows you have to sever the head. No, you could have thought, havamina mak tara b'rosh shosha mizbeach, af melika b'rosh shosha mizbeach. You could have thought to say like this. Maybe malak viktir is teaching you something else. That just like you do the burning at the top of the altar, because it says malak right before that, the malika has to happen in the same place at the top of the altar. But hashta dekata brachmana vikrivo darish peinamiha. How do we know, though, that the malak viktir has to come with some explanation of a way that it's completely, the bird is completely different. The bird burnt offering is completely different from the bird's sin offering. That's because of the word hikrivo. So hikrivo affected how we darshan do malak viktir and how we darshan kamishpat then. The kamishpat is not kamishpat chatat ha'of because it's not like the chatat ha'of, and that's what caused the rabbis to get to their interpretation. And now we're going to go into the 3 ways the Chachamim say it's similar to chatat be'ema. It doesn't come from Maser Sheni, right? Only from Chullin. So chatat be'ema de'ena ba'a ela min ha'chulin minala. Now we want to know, okay, similar to chatat be'ema in that sense. How do we know the chatat be'ema doesn't come from, right? Only comes from Chullin. Okay, we're in this box of the chart. I'm going to stop sharing because there's nothing really in the chart that's going to add to this right now. So what's the reason? Where do we get it from? That you can't buy a chatat behema from Maser Sheni. Amar Rav Chisda de Amar Krai. He says, because look at this pasuk. We're now going to learn from the pasuk of the Kohen Gadol and Yom Kippur. V'yikriv Aharon et par chatat asher lo. He has to bring the bull offering, the bull sin offering that is his. What do we learn that is his? Mishalo. It has to belong to him. What does that mean, belong to him? V'lo mishal tzibor. It can't be from public funds. V'lo mishal maaser. And it can't come from Maser Sheni funds. It has to come from his own private bank account. Okay, bayom. Now we're going to ask a question on this drasha of bayom. We're going to learn bayom, right, from chatat be'ema. That's how we know the olat ha'of has to be done, sacrificed during the day. Okay, there's a weird drasha. Mi bayom tzavaton nafka. Okay, if you remember Zvachim, we learned that all sacrifices go during the day, and that's because of this end pasuk, one of the last pasukim in the section, it is even the last, of the sacrifices, asher tziva, it's either the last or the second to last, vayikra zayin pasuk lamed chet, asher tziva shebet Moshe b'Har Sinai biyom tzavoto bnei Israel. God commanded Moshe at Har Sinai on the day he commanded. Now, why they have to specifically point out the day? From here, they darshan all sacrifices only go on during the day. So, why do we need this here on the list? To which the answer, kedei naspa. You don't really need it on the list. Because they were mentioning ways it's similar to chatat be'ema, so they mentioned this also. But it's not really learned out from chatat be'ema, it's learned out from this pasuk. Okay, similar question now, but a different answer, different type of answer. The third one, yado hayimanit, the fact you have to do it with your right hand, mida rabba bar bachana nafka. That's also learned from somewhere else. Amar Rabba bar bachana amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, kol makom shenemar etzva o kuna ina el yamin. And we learned this both in Zvachim, we learned it in Menachot, you might remember, if you learned those Masechta with us. Whether it says etzba in the pasuk, that the Kohen dips his finger and puts the blood, or whether it says kiuna, the Kohen does it, it means it has to be done with the right hand. So here it says Kohen, it doesn't say etzba, but it says Kohen. It says Kohen has to do it, obviously it has to be done with the right hand. So why did the rabbi say it's learned from chatat be'ema? It's really learned from this principle. Well, the idach, the rabbi's position here, must hold kahuna baya etzba lo baya kahuna. when the word kahuna appears by itself, it doesn't mean yamin unless it says finger of the Kohen. But the word finger on its own is an indicator of right hand, even without the word Kohen. Anyway, the point being the first part, which is here it just says Kohen, it doesn't say finger, so it wouldn't need right hand unless we had a different drasha, and that's why we need the drasha to learn it out kamishpat from chatat behema, that it's done with the right hand. Okay, now, one last question, and I'll just bring up the chart for one last minute so you can also both review it and look it over, and also you're going to see why we're asking this question right now. V'tanakam of Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, mimul ha'oref menalahu. Rabbi Yishmael, if you remember, learned kimishpat ha'of. Kimishpat is kimishpat chatat ha'of. In what way? What do we learn from the chatat ha'of? That we do it mimul ha'oref. Remember, it said in the pasuk, going back up, pasuk chet in chapter 5, u'malak et rosho mimul orpo. So where do you do the malika? In the back of the neck. So now, Tanakam, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, mimul ha'oref menalahu. Now they don't learn that from they don't learn, right? Chachamim don't learn that kimishpat is like chatat ha'of at all. And Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon learns it's like chatat ha'of for the fact that it's still attached to the head. Where do we get the whole back of the neck thing? Gamre milikami milika. Well, both of them say umalaket rosho, that's the chatat. And the ola in chapter 1, verse 15 says umalaket rosho. So since they both have the same action of malika, and in one place it says malika means in the back of the neck, we assume that when it says malika in the other pasuk, it also means the back of the neck. And from there, we finish that section. Okay, so we had the 3 different interpretations of what the word kamishpat is coming to teach us. 2 in the sense of, one says we compare to chatat behema, one says we compare to chatat ha'of, again, sin offering of an animal or sin offering of a bird, but what we compare it to, right? So chatat behema, we have 3 things, even though we really said in the end it's only 2, right? It doesn't come from Maser Sheni, and you have to do it with the right hand, and the biyon was just thrown in there. And according to Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, it teaches you either mimul ha'oref, it has to be done in the back of the neck, or according to Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, where he disagrees with Chachamim and Rabbi Yishmael about this, that you actually don't cut both simanim entirely. Where it says v'lo yavdil, we're going to apply that, don't separate the head from the body, we're going to apply that also back to the chatat, to the olat ha'of as well. Okay, that's our summary. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next section. The main thing to know in this next section is pretty straightforward and simple. There's torim and there's bnei yonah. In every time it talks about bird sacrifices, it's either torim, which are doves, or it's bnei yonah, which are pigeons. Okay, but bnei yonah are sons of pigeons, which means young pigeons. Torim doesn't have the word bnei. They're going to be older. So now we're going to start the Mishnah by saying, kasher b'torim pasul b'bnei yonah, whichever age is good for torim, for the older ones, is pasul b'bnei yonah. You can't have pigeons, you can't bring a pigeon of that age. And kasher b'bnei yonah, and the age that you can bring the pigeons, which is the young age, pasul b'torim, isn't going to work for the torim. They don't yet tell you what the age is, but they do say here, techilat sihuv b'zeh u'b'zeh pasul. When it starts to get yellow, we're talking about the feathers turn yellow, that's part of the maturation process of the bird. They start to turn yellow, we're going to distinguish now between until they start to turn yellow, that's the young age. Once they're already completely yellow, that's the older age, that's the torim. But the in-between, the Mishnah tells us, is bezeh u'bezeh pasul, is not good, not for the bnei yonah and not for the torim. Okay, neither can be brought at that age. So now we're going to go into these details in the Gemara, bring a lot of different braitot that expand on it, and also show us in the psukim where we get this from. Tanu Rabbanan, torim gedolim ksherim, ktanim psulim. So the ones that are older, right? The Mishnah never said older, younger. I told you that. The Mishnah just says the one that's disqualified for that is kosher for that, and the one that's kosher for that is disqualified for that. So he says torim gedolim ksherim, ktanim psulim. The torim are ksherim only when they're older. Can't bring them as a sacrifice when they're younger. Bnei, and they're psulim, they're completely disqualified. And bnei yonah, ktanim ksherim, gedolim psulim. When it comes to the pigeons, the younger ones are the ones that are ksherim, the older ones are completely disqualified. Nimtza kasher b'torim pasul b'bnei yonah. Now the braita comes to the same conclusion as the Mishnah. What's kasher for the torim is disqualified in the bnei yonah, and what's kasher for the bnei yonah is disqualified in the torim. Okay? It's good for the pigeons, is bad, right? It's not relevant. That age is not relevant for the doves, and vice versa. Tanu Rabbanan. Now we're going to have another braita. Torim, gdolim velo ktanim. Torim sounds like older. Why? Well, it's missing the word bnei, which is the young one. Well, shechova lo dinu. Now they're going to make a kavachomer, and then we're going to do the reverse kind of kavachomer. You'll see in a minute. So they're going to say a kavachomer argument, turning now to Amud Bet. Uma bnei yonah shelo huchsheru b'gdolim huchsheru b'ktanim. Now bnei yonah are not kosher when they're older. You can't bring them as a sacrifice when they're older, and yet huchsheru b'ktanim, and yet you can bring them at a younger age. So torim shuchsheru b'gdolim ein odin shuchsheru b'ktanim. So now we're going to say like this. If the bnei yonah are limited, and what are they limited to? Only young ones. So the torim, which are not so limited because they can be brought as older ones, wouldn't you say then logically, if they could be brought in cases where the bnei yonah can't be, which is at an older age, don't you think all the more so they should be able to be brought at a younger age? Again, this is a classic kavachomer. It doesn't mean it's true. And in fact, we're going to prove it's not true. Talmud Lamar, and we know it's not true because we read the Mishna. Talmud Lamar, torim, gdolim velo ktanim. From the word torim, we're going to get it's only torim and not young ones. Okay, we're going to see in a little bit where we really get this from here and why is it so clear to them that that's the case. Bnei yonah. Now we're going to do the exact same thing but in the reverse. Bnei yonah, sons that write young pigeons, ktanim velo gdolim. So again, it means young and not old. Shechova lo dinu. Now based on the assumption, the conclusion, of the very last section, we can make a kavachomer the other way. Ma torim shelo huchsheru b'ktanim huchsheru b'gdolim. Now torim are no good brought young, but yet you can bring them when they're older. So bnei yonah huchsheru b'ktanim. So if the bnei yonah can be brought as young, ein odin huchsheru b'gdolim. Don't you think all the more so they should be brought when they're older? Talmud lomar bnei yonah ktanim velo gdolim. Therefore, it says bnei yonah to specify only when they're young. So now the Gemara asks, my Talmud, how is it so clear from the words bnei yonah and the words torim that the bnei yonah are always young, and the torim means they have to be older? Amar Rava. Rava explains. Lo lishtamit krava lichtov min bnei hatorim o min hayonah. The pasuk, in all the places it mentions these pairs of birds, which is a lot of places, it never, ever, ever says the bnei torim or the yonah. It always says the bnei yonah and the torim. It never says young, right, sons of doves or pigeons without the word young. Since every single mention of it is bnei yonah and every single mention of torim is torim without the bnei, it must be that torim is always older and bnei yonah are always younger. And that's how they're dashning. They're dashning it not from one mention of it, but from all the mentions of it. Okay, that's how he explains the drasha and the braita. So now they have a question, and they say, Ema bnei yonah, dekatabu rachmana bnei, ktanim im dolim lo. Now maybe bnei yonah I get. Okay. Says bnei, must be only bnei. But torim, maybe it's trying to tell you any Torah is acceptable. Doesn't matter its age. Ibai gdolim leite, ibai ktanim leite. If you want to bring bigger ones, you want to bring smaller ones, it's all an option. So the answer, no. It's dumia de bnei yonah. They're like the bnei yonah. Ma bnei yonah ktanim im gdolim lo, af torim gdolim im ktanim lo. So it has to be, since they're always put next to, juxtaposed to the bnei yonah, it must be like the bnei yonah. The bnei yonah are only banim. The torim must be only gdolim. Tanu Rabbanan, another braita. Now we're going to learn a different halacha, and this is going to give us the source for, in other words, again, all these braita to bring in the sources in the Torah for the halacha we learned in the Mishna, and a little more detail. So now this braita is going to say, Yachol yuhu kol torim v'chol bnei yonah ksherim. You might have thought they're all ksherim. Now remember, the braita the Mishna, had told us that the ones that are in between stage are no good. Remember? So now they're going to say like this: Talmud lomar min torim v'lo kol torim, min bnei hayonah v'lo kol bnei yonah. Min, when you say from the torim, from the bnei yonah, from always means some and not all. So now we're going to have to limit it. So what is it limiting? Exactly the case we saw in the Mishna. Prat techilat zihuv shebezeh v'shebezeh shepasul. This comes to exclude the beginning when they start to turn yellow, where they start maturing. Okay, this is, by the way, if you remember, in Ketubot, for example, we learned about this, and in Nashim in general, there's 3 stages for women. There's Ktana, when she's young. There's a Na'ara, which is this in-between, like 6-month period, when she starts to have signs of puberty, but she's not yet a Gdolah, right, a Bogeret. Bogerit is the third stage. So it seems like birds have the same three stages, where there's young, in between, starting to mature, and reach age of maturity. So now we're going to say that doesn't work for either one. And where do we get it? Min torim, which means not all. Or min bnei yonah, not all. It's excluding this additional case. Tane Yaakov Korcha. Me'ematai bnei yonah kshirim, mishiya'al'u. He gives a different explanation. Now here we're talking about something else. He's saying, what's the earliest point you could bring a ben yonah? We know the earliest point for the torim, that's once they become already, right, their leaves have turned golden, okay, or yellowed. But what's the early stage for a ben yonah? Is it from the moment they're born? So now we're going to learn now. The early stage, according to Yaakov Korcha, brings this braita that says they're kshirim mishiya'al'u. Okay, what is that? We don't know. Hu tane la v'hu amar. He brought this braita and then he explained it. And he brings a pasuk from Eov. Efrochav ya'al'u dam. Okay, it's talking about the young ones of the nesher, which is a griffin vulture. They suck blood. Okay, now, what does this mean here? Well, ya'alalu goes with blood. So now they explain, emat, when is this? Amar Abaye nichish. So when it says in the ya'alalu dam means they suck blood. But the point is that when he said mishiya'al'u, this has something to do with blood. What does it have to do with blood? Abaye says, michishamit gad famine va'ate dama. The earliest stage that they can be brought as a sacrifice is that it has to be that if you were to take off their wing, blood would come out, meaning there's blood flowing through their body. That's when they're able, it's the earliest stage that a ben yonah could become a sacrifice. So we're now learning that even though we saw until now it was limited for the maximum age, this also happens to be a minimum age. By Rabbi Elazar. Now we're going to end with this question, and we're going to try to answer it, but we're going to see tomorrow that they're not going to love this answer. By Rabbi Elazar. Haomer harei alai olam min torim o min bnei yonah. It's a creative question. It says, if somebody says, I'm going to bring a korban olah from either torim or bnei yonah, okay, from one or the other, v'hevi techilat sihuv shebezeh v'shebezeh mahu. What if he brought a Torah and a ben yonah, or she brought a Torah and a ben yonah, that were each in this in-between age? Now remember, neither is valid. So what's the question? Well, the question is, why is neither valid? Mahu. Do we say, sfeika have v'nafik? Maybe it's a case of doubt. We don't know. It's like ben hashmashot on Erev Shabbat, right? Or any day, right? Where we're not sure if it's night, we're not sure if it's day. We have mincha, we have marav, right? We don't know. So here also, we're not sure, is it, right? Or did Shabbos come in, did Shabbos not come in, right? Right, that's why we make Shabbos early and end Shabbos late, because of this safek. So now we don't know it's safek. Now, if it's safek, actually it works, because if it's young, then the ben yonah will be good. If it's old, then the Torah will be valid. So since we brought one of each, and the person only needs to bring one, he would fulfill his obligation either which way. Or do we say, Dilma bria have velo nafik? Or do we say that age is a completely different age, like a na'ara? A na'ara is not like we're unsure, is she young or is she mature? Or maybe it is, right? We don't know. But like its own unique stage, and it's not valid no matter what. So the person would not fulfill their obligation at all. So Amar Rava Tashma. Rava says, let's try to get an answer from here. Look at the braita that we quoted before. We said, Mina torim umin bnei yonah. What did we say? Min comes to exclude, right? And what does it exclude? It excludes prat techilat sihuv shebezeh v'shebezeh shepasul. So Iyamar bishlam abriya have shapir. If you're going to say, look, it's its own entity, and that's why you need a pasuk, and the pasuk excludes this time period. It's its own entity. Ella, that works. Ella, Iyamar tzveika have itzrich kradam yute tzveika. But if you say we're just not sure which one it is, we don't have psukim that come to resolve doubts. What's a doubt? The pasuk, when there's a drasha on the pasuk, the Torah was written, right? God puts together the Torah, right? God knows everything. There's no doubts, klapei shmaya, in terms of God. There's no doubt, what is this stage? God knew what the stage was. So God doesn't bring up pasuk to tell you, don't bring this because you might be in doubt about it. Okay, that's not the way the Torah works. The Torah talks about definitive things. We, as humans, often doubt, what does that mean? What does it mean this age? What does it mean that age? Ben yonah, what's a Torah? So we have a doubt, so we're going to be stringent about it and say, well, don't bring that one and don't bring that one. But we don't have a pasuk that would come to exclude a case of a doubt. Okay, so That's where we're left with right now. So Rava is trying to answer Rabbi Elazar's question and say it sounds like it would be a bria and not a safek, and you wouldn't be able to fulfill your obligation with both those birds that you brought. With that, we finished our daf. We'll do a quick summary. So the first part we kind of summarized already, but I'll just say it one quick minute. We talked about the 3 different opinions about what the kamishpat, this olat ha'of, the bird, is going to be like, either the chatat behema or the chatat ha'of, and then in what way. We had 3 different opinions, which for our Gemara's purpose, we were really bringing to show that there's a difference of opinion about whether this pasuk lo yavdil, don't separate the head, don't sever it from the body, according to Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, is the same thing is true also for the olah. Others say, no, the olah doesn't say anything about it. It must be, it's different, right? It says, especially because it says hikrivo. From there it shows this is distinct from the other one. And then we're going to learn that it might be similar in other ways, but this issue of severing the head, we actually have to sever the head. Okay, and then we had other reasons to maybe say that, right? The malak v'iktir, maybe that's proof, but we sever the head on the olah. So we have this, right? And then both simanim have to be cut completely. Then we moved on to the torim and the bnei yonah, and we basically showed all the different psukim that prove what are the ages each of these could be brought, right? We never got to a number, it was more a stage. And this middle stage, we left with this question, is it a safek or is it just its own time period that's not young and not old? And with that, we finish for today, wishing everyone a Chag Sameach and a Shabbat Shalom.